The new director, John, recently joined our product development department. At first, I thought he was a hard-working young man, but it turned out he couldn't grasp the situation on the ground, pushing us into excessive labor. At this rate, my colleagues will collapse. Taking a bold step, I protested, and John twisted his face and retorted,
"So you were the one leaking the product's confidential information. A traitor with only a high school diploma is fired."
After being rushed out of the company by John, I stood outside the building for a while, but then I gathered myself and called Harry, the CEO of our company. When I explained the situation, Harry gasped and pressed me for answers.
"What about the patents if you leave the company?"
"The company will go bankrupt in a month without my patents, but since a high school dropout is useless, I guess you'll have to manage."
"Wait."
Harry urgently called me to his office, wanting to speak in person. There, an unexpected person was waiting for me. "My name is Tom Green. I'm a 32-year-old company employee. After graduating from high school, I immediately started working at a local factory. Because, ever since my father fell seriously ill and was hospitalized when I was in elementary school, my family has lived in poverty. I joined the local factory hoping to support my family financially, but it was a small factory and went bankrupt after 8 years. Feeling lost about what to do next, someone reached out to me. It was Mary Brown, who worked for a client of the factory. Mary, 3 years my senior and holding a respectable position, helped me get a job at a company that I wouldn't have passed the document screening for with my educational background, as it was a major corporation. Since then, I've worked hard for the past 9 years, grateful to her. I was always interested in creating new things, so I was happy to be assigned to the product development department. But initially, as a high school graduate and mid-career hire, I was anxious about fitting in with my highly educated colleagues at a large corporation. However, once I started working, I realized that in the field of product development, education and age didn't matter at all. As we discussed how to improve products, I naturally became part of the team, even though it was awkward at first. As I threw myself into product development, by the time our first product was completed, I found myself at the center of the team. From then on, as I worked tirelessly every day, I started to receive various consultations and began to take on more innovative and bold developments. With each passing day, our team's unity strengthened, and some of the products we developed became socially popular and turned into a series. Now, that series has become a flagship product supporting the company. As long as this series exists, the company's sales are said to be stable, and I finally felt the weight off my shoulders. Was this my way of repaying the company and Mary for their help? Thinking this, I felt proud and confident, backed by experience, as I devoted myself to work alongside my colleagues. Thus, our workplace became completely fulfilling, and we were leading satisfied daily lives, something we hadn't anticipated at all. Just one person has drastically changed the future of the company. That person is John Brown, who was newly appointed as the director of the development department due to a personnel change. John is just 30 years old, younger than me. He has never belonged to the development department, nor has any experience in development. The reason he became the director is because he's the son of the company's CEO. From what I've heard from my colleagues, it seems he's being rotated through all the departments to gain experience in preparation to eventually take over the company. He has worked in general affairs, sales, and now, it appears the development department is his next stop. Initially, we welcomed him, thinking the next CEO wanted to learn about the field work with his own eyes. But that illusion quickly shattered.
Now that I'm here, I expect to see a significant increase in sales. The way things have been done up to now has been too soft, resulting in too much waste and failure.
On his first day during the morning assembly, John declared this while crossing his arms in front of us. True to his word, from that day on, we were relentlessly pushed to develop products that seemed profitable. John had us create sales charts down to the penny to keep track of sales in real time. If we didn't meet the target amount he had set, he'd yell at us for not trying hard enough. The abrupt change in direction left us bewildered. Up until now, the development department held meetings with all employees to exchange ideas before developing new products, working together without distinction between superiors and subordinates. But now, we're so driven by sales figures that we hardly have time for meetings, let alone casual greetings. In just 1 month since John arrived, the development department has turned into a tense and stifling place. Seeing my colleagues' gloomy faces, I resolved to confront John and change the current situation. This is because both the senior employees and the younger staff were exhausted, barely managing to meet their daily quotas. It's hard to come up with good product ideas with a rigid mind. Above all, I didn't want the workplace I've cherished so much to be ruined any further. John, I need to talk to you. Could you please reconsider the work format? If this continues, the morale of the employees will drop, and we won't last.
If you have time to worry about trivial matters, get to work.
That was all John replied, dismissing my concerns and piling more work on me. In that case, I decided to focus on product development, aiming to build up enough achievements to avoid any complaints. But no matter how many proposals I submitted, John wouldn't even give them a proper look, rejecting them without reason or demanding nonsensical revisions. It seemed like he was just shooting down my ideas on a whim. He would order revisions one day, only to discard them the next, making this chaotic approach a daily routine. Even if by some miracle he approved a presentation, he'd demand an impossible schedule for completion. After enduring overtime beyond our limits to finally launch a product, all the achievements and recognition would be claimed by John. All the hard work, faced with constant complaints, yet reaping no rewards when the results were snatched away. As we repeated this demoralizing cycle, the employees' motivation steadily declined. This situation worsened, and as we struggled, our competing companies began to outperform us. Products that we should have launched were being developed one after another by our competitors. Among them were products strikingly similar to those John had criticized, launched by the competing company and achieving strong sales. Facing such irrational circumstances and a hopeless work environment, employees, especially the younger ones, started leaving the company one by one. Now, the only ones left are those who can't afford to quit because they have families to support. But far from being alarmed by this abnormal situation, John was convinced that employees who remained wouldn't easily leave, pushing an even harsher environment on us. Working till late night after night became the norm. Additionally, tasks that were originally supposed to be handled by John started being assigned to us as part of our job. As quitting time approached, John would arrogantly throw documents on my desk.
Finish these documents too. The deadline is tomorrow morning.
He commanded, then left us behind to clock out on time himself. In the end, we, the minimal staff left in the office, were forced to handle nearly twice the amount of work as before. I pleaded for at least hiring new employees to replace those who had resigned, but it was ultimately denied with the insistence that the work was still getting managed, so no new hires were necessary.
Those who left were incompetent employees who couldn't even handle this level of work. You guys are capable, so you should naturally be able to handle this much.
As rumored before, John had absolutely no experience working in the development department. Whether he was aware of it or not, he seemed to have no realization of the unreasonable demands he was placing on us. His poor instructions did not cease thereafter. We were worked like slaves every day, drained of the energy to even think of rebelling against the director. Seeing my colleagues' faces of despair, I reconsidered that this situation couldn't continue. Honestly, our skills in releasing hit products are quite high. We would be welcomed at any other company. I even considered resigning en masse and moving to a new company, but there was no guarantee of re-employment, and the concern for living expenses in the meantime was worrying. Moreover, voluntarily resigning meant a significant difference in the retirement benefits from the company, which was another issue. Furthermore, considering John's past behavior, it was unlikely he would let us go without a fuss. He would surely find ways to harass or obstruct us. Considering all this, I reluctantly concluded that staying at this workplace was the wiser choice. If we decided to stay, we should at least strive to improve the working environment. Resolved to make a stand, I steeled myself for a serious talk with John.
Calling me out must mean you have something incredibly important to discuss. If you use this as an excuse to slack off, you won't get off easy.
John, upon entering the conference room, plopped down heavily onto a chair, making no effort to conceal his displeasure. Even though he agreed to the discussion, given his demeanor, I had no idea how much of what I said he would actually take to heart.
I'm not as free as you non-management employees. I have a meeting with an external party soon, so make it quick. Well, you have 3 minutes.
He ordered from his high horse, but we were anything but free. On the contrary, due to John's demands, we were in a constant race against deadlines, barely managing to get any sleep. John, it's time to improve the working methods within the department. The way you're directing things is harming the company's profits.
What are you talking about? I don't recall forcing anyone to do anything.
He feigned ignorance with a nonchalant face, which made my blood boil. Continuing in this state, the employees couldn't possibly keep working. The company would collapse, yet what was John thinking? We're all working overtime every day, reaching our limits. At least stop taking the credit for our work and recognize the employees' achievements. I pleaded, despite feeling a seething anger. I couldn't stand John's attitude, but I couldn't bear to see my exhausted colleagues anymore. However, all I got back was John's mocking laughter.
You all chose to work here. The company pays you a salary for your labor. What's the problem?
Everything is the problem. If this continues, all the employees will collapse. We've reached our limit. And hadn't you noticed we're being outperformed by our competitors? I tried my best to persuade John, showing him documents I had prepared. Recently, products very similar to the series our company had been releasing were all being developed by our competing company. Even after I showed John the document summarizing the fact, he didn't bat an eyelid. While our development team has been suffering under John's oppressive work environment, the competing company has been steadily increasing sales. It was impossible for him not to see the current state, yet John completely ignored my opinions.
Your 3 minutes are up.
He declared, ending the conversation and walking out of the meeting room, leaving me behind. I sighed deeply, left alone in the meeting room. It seemed the only option left was to take this matter to someone higher up. With that thought, I went home, but the situation drastically changed the next day. The next morning, as I headed to work, pondering how to convey our troubles to the upper management, I noticed John unusually present early in the morning. Surprised, I saw him walk straight up to me with a beaming smile.
Tom, you don't need to come to the office anymore.
Shocked by his abrupt statement, I was at a loss for words. But John, looking pleased with himself, thrust some documents at me. In his hand was the comparison chart I had handed over in the meeting room the day before, comparing our company with the competing company.
I thought it was strange that similar products were being released by our competing company. It turns out you were the one leaking the information, Tom.
What are you talking about? I asked, completely confused by his accusation. Then John just smirked and announced,
You leaked information. That's a serious betrayal to the company. You're a high school dropout, right? After all we've done to employ you, you repay us with betrayal.
Being accused of something I had no memory of, all I could do was shake my head in denial. Stunned, John shot me a glare and spat out his words with a twisted scowl.
Even though you're older than me, you're still just a non-management employee, harboring resentment against the company. To think someone with just a high school education should be grateful for the chance to work here, yet causes trouble for the company, is unbelievable.
But even if you say that. Trying to speak up, he rudely cut me off to enforce his point.
Slow in your work and now betraying the company. A high school graduate like you is fired. Pack your things and leave before you get sued.
Normally, even if he's my superior and the CEO's son, John shouldn't have the authority to fire me. But in that moment, shocked, my mind couldn't function, and I was hurried out of the office by John. Standing in front of the building for a while, it took me about 10 minutes to gradually comprehend the situation. As much as I wanted to stay, as long as John is in the development department, I would likely face the same harassment over and over. Thinking resignation was my only option, yet not satisfied with being forced out this way. After a moment of thought, I pulled out my phone and reached out to a certain individual.
Let's see. You're Tom Green, right? What's the deal with you reaching out to me?
The person who answered was Harry Brown, the CEO of the company. I briefly recounted the events that had just unfolded, concluding with, "For the reasons mentioned, I have decided to resign from the company." Through the phone, I could hear Harry gasp.
What foolishness are you talking about? What about the patents if you leave the company?
Without my patents, the company will go bankrupt in a month. But since a high school dropout is useless, I guess you'll have to manage.
Wait.
Harry was muttering stuff like that can't be true or there's no way. Then he began to accuse me with a strong tone.
No matter how much you claim the product you developed is yours, the patent rights should belong to the company.
No, I have a contract stating that all products I develop have patent rights belonging to me. Employees who invent products in the workplace have the right to receive patents. Unless the right to receive patents is transferred from the inventor to the company in advance and specified in the work rules, the rights belong to the employee. Therefore, when an inventor leaves the company, like in this case, it is necessary to transfer the rights, but I certainly didn't feel like going through the procedure. Upon hearing my response, Harry began bustling around on the phone, and then started speaking loudly to someone. And then, insisting on speaking with me directly, he called me into the CEO's office. Just after being kicked out of the company, I stepped back into it as instructed and opened the door to the CEO's office. Inside, waiting for me was Mary, who had brought me into this company. She is actually Harry's real daughter, the sister of John, and currently the executive director of this company. In front of Harry and Mary, I explained everything that had happened from the beginning again. As the conversation progressed, Harry started sweating profusely and, conversely, Mary's face turned pale with a serious expression. And then, she said something unexpected.
In the first place, wasn't John made the head of the product development department to learn the know-how from Tom here?
According to John's report, there was no problem at all. In fact, I thought it was sufficient evidence since the sales of the product development department were increasing.
Sharp criticism from Mary flies at Harry, who is nervously making excuses.
You'll understand if you listen to Tom's report now. The development department is currently in a very difficult situation.
As Harry completely slumped, Mary turned around and deeply apologized to me.
I didn't know it had come to this. I'm truly sorry. As the executive director of this company and as John's sister, the CEO's daughter, I'm really sorry.
It's not something for you to apologize for, Mary. I instinctively shook my head, but Mary stubbornly persisted.
No, both my father and I are still responsible for the actions of the employees. It's unacceptable that John would arbitrarily fire Tom.
He probably didn't know about the patent issue because he thought of me as just a high school graduate non-management employee. But I believe his actions were reckless. It's likely that John got angry because I didn't obey him and decided to expel me as a warning. However, if I were to leave the company, the popular series I hold patents for would no longer be marketable. If that were to happen, the loss to this company, which lost its flagship product, would be immeasurable. As I pondered over this, Mary once again apologized to me.
I'm truly sorry about what happened this time. Please, won't you stay with this company?
So, does that mean I won't be fired? Just to make sure, when I asked, Mary let out a tired sigh.
Originally, John had no right to fire Tom. Perhaps he misunderstood his position as the CEO's son.
However, the situation took an unexpected turn afterwards. What was thought to be John's unilateral decision in this incident was later revealed to be an unbelievable situation through investigation. It turns out that John had been poached by a competing company and caused this trouble. Mary explained the situation in detail to me, as I couldn't believe that he, who was supposed to become the next CEO as the CEO's son, would do such a thing.
I never imagined this. I had never even considered competing for the presidency.
What do you mean? Apparently, Harry had decided to make Mary the next CEO at the same time as John's transfer. Mary, who has been working by the CEO's side for years and is currently the executive director of the company. So, Harry was preparing to appoint Mary as his successor, but John was not okay with that. John was resentful that Mary, his own sister, was expected to be the new CEO instead of him, setting aside the fact that he's the current CEO's own son. And then, it seems a competing company approached him, trying to poach him.
I was told by them, if you'd rather work under your sister for life, you might as well just shut down the company. They even said they'd welcome me with open arms if I siphoned off talented personnel and potentially lucrative products.
John confessed to such facts. To support that, it was revealed that former employees who had left the company had been scouted by the competing company almost immediately. In fact, Many former employees are now working for the competing company. It was John who had been passing on the list of retirees and information to the competing company.
So basically, John was connected to the competing company. That's probably why he didn't stop such reckless orders even when the development department was in such a tense atmosphere.
Still, even if he's the CEO's son, it's too elaborate for John to have done it alone. Mary slowly nodded in agreement with my opinion.
There are probably some people in the upper management who were involved as well, which I haven't been able to fully investigate. It's strange enough that, as the executive director, I had no idea about this situation at all.
So, does that mean someone was hiding information along the way? Those who were connected to the competing company in the upper management must have been thinking of undermining the management whenever they had the chance. Expelling employees and leaking information to outsiders are serious breaches of trust towards the company and are unmistakable crimes. Even without that, John's actions can only be described as atrocious. I couldn't believe he would bankrupt the company just because he was excluded as a candidate for the next CEO.
Perhaps if you had quit Tom, the plan would have been complete. So maybe they focused on you for harassment beyond John's expectations. But Tom has contributed a lot to this company more than John imagined.
So are you saying he insisted on firing me on pretextual grounds because I didn't submit my resignation letter? Indeed, I was planning to submit my resignation letter. In that case, I would have left this company according to John's plan, under the guise of voluntary resignation.
Tom holds the patents for our company's popular series. If you were to leave the company, the sales would plummet, and the damage would be immeasurable.
Mary furrowed her brows and continued.
It seems like the competing company were planning to approach you as soon as you left the company. They probably would have reached out within a week.
I have no intention of accepting their offer. Frankly, I'm annoyed that they think I'd easily switch to a competing company. At least while I have Mary, my benefactor, around, I have no intention of letting the patent be used by another company. Those who plotted to make me leave couldn't understand such feelings, nor could they even imagine them. Mary's lips, which had been tightly sealed all along, finally curved into a relieved smile.
I know Tom is a sincere person.
Just to confirm again, I'm still allowed to stay in this company, right? When I asked, Mary's eyes widened in surprise.
Of course. I won't allow Tom to be fired. Besides, neither a dismissal notice nor a resignation letter has been submitted.
Finally, I let out a sigh of relief at Mary's words. Thank you for your continued support.
The feeling is mutual. But first, we need to clean up the company. It's going to be quite an undertaking.
Mary smiled gently, but her eyes were filled with determination. From there, things progressed rapidly. While John was in a good mood, thinking I had resigned, Mary gathered trustworthy employees and shared information. Meanwhile, John left the office as usual at the end of the day and went out for dinner. At the dinner, the upper management and employees from other companies who were planning to destroy our company were celebrating the success of their plan. Mary and her team, who were secretly tailing them, were able to identify the members who betrayed the company on the spot. Afterward, Mary and her team thoroughly investigated the cases that the traitors had been involved with in the past. They eventually uncovered evidence of unjust removal and tampering with company documents, revealing that unfairly transferred personnel and technology had leaked to a considerable extent. With all the preparations in place, the showdown was set for the start of the following week. Some of the employees and executives who came to work were taken aback by the unusual atmosphere pervading the office. An unprecedented personnel announcement was made by Harry. Posted in the lobby, a notice listed the names of those who had defected to the competing company, including John at the forefront. Among them were some big names, and everyone turned pale and trembled at the penalties being handed down one after another.
Why am I being fired? I'm the CEO's son.
John, who received the harshest penalty, spat out in disbelief and ranted. Given his deliberate leak of information, it was only natural for him to receive the harshest punishment. He was disciplined for violating the confidentiality agreement. Standing in front of him, furious, was his father, Harry.
I know everything you've done. You've really done something terrible, you foolish son.
It's your fault, Dad. How could you shuffle me around the company and then make Mary the next CEO?
John was red-faced with anger, but Harry only looked sad and lowered his eyebrows.
You can't just become CEO overnight without knowing anything about the company. I was giving you the chance to learn about the whole company by experiencing different departments.
But
even after hearing the reason, John continued to complain, prompting a sharp rebuke from Harry.
Thinking you could become CEO just because you're my son is naive. That's why you could do something like sell out the company without valuing the employees.
why did you?
It must have finally dawned on him that their entire scheme had been exposed. John looked around desperately, searching for an escape, but he was surrounded by employees giving him cold stares. Realizing there was no way out, John's face turned pale, and he started shaking uncontrollably.
What you did is unforgivable. You're fired, with disciplinary dismissal. And of course, no retirement benefits whatsoever.
John collapsed to the floor and began to cry shamelessly, while other employees involved in the wrongdoing stood frozen in shock or sweated profusely in panic. A grim atmosphere enveloped the place, but there was no sympathy to be had. They had to atone for what they had done. In this way, the development department, which had been thrown into chaos since John took over, somehow managed to return to its original state. And so, I reluctantly accepted the promotion offer that I had turned down many times before. I still loved working with machines on the floor as a rank-and-file employee. But I had learned the hard way that I couldn't be a stopgap as a non-management employee if something like this happened again. Considering the future, I quickly became a department head. The one who was most delighted by this outcome was Mary, my benefactor.
It was impossible for Tom, who has developed numerous popular series and obtained patents, to remain a non-management employee. I'm counting on you to support our company and me from now on.
Mary, who smiled warmly, had just been appointed the new CEO, succeeding the former CEO Harry, and was now capably running the company. The development department, greatly reduced in numbers due to John's actions, saw a surge in applications when it started recruiting anew. Surprisingly, many of the former employees came back. Upon asking, it seems they had held off on finding new jobs after quitting. Though they had offers to join the competing company, the timing was too coincidental, raising suspicions. Thanks to many talented employees returning, the development department quickly resumed its usual activities. As for John, he was indeed welcomed by the competing company as per the contract. However, with the plan failing and our company still standing, the promised executive position was revoked. In addition, they probably wanted to steer clear of further trouble with our company. He was given mundane tasks as a dead-end employee, and he couldn't bear it, so he submitted his resignation right away. He left with a declaration of achieving greater things, but ended up hopping from one part-time job to another. Still, it's a fact that our company's information leaked to a competing company. We've suffered considerable damage, with several products using our technology released. But the new CEO Mary calmly proceeded with legal action against the former employees for leaking corporate secrets. And she was not only cracking down on wrongdoing, but also actively spearheading internal reforms. She reviewed compliance thoroughly, revamped employee training systems, and established a merit-based promotion system regardless of education or age. This reform especially motivated the new employees, who were full of energy. Their fresh ideas, combined with my long-standing technical skills, led to the development of innovative new products. Constantly adjusting our product plans to fit the times, we've been able to launch even more successful products than before. Thanks to this, the information leaked to our competitors became obsolete. Under the leadership of the new CEO Mary, our company continues to grow every day.
Tom, I'm truly grateful you're here. Would you stay with me forever?
I'd be happy to stay with you, Mary. Expressing my genuine feelings, she smiled happily. Since then, we've grown closer, both professionally and personally. Meeting Mary was the greatest happiness of my life. Without her, I wouldn't be who I am today. We plan to continue supporting and encouraging each other, living a fulfilling life together,